What is up, HiTech Podcast listeners? I don't really know how to intro this because this is not something we normally do. We usually have we're not the most organized podcast in the world. Well, okay, hold on. We're the most organized podcast in the world, undoubtedly.
We probably are, yeah.
But we are not the most scripted podcast in the world.
We don't have a production team. Right? There's no production team running us. We run ourselves, but we don't have a plan. Like, there's nobody in the background going, script. Fine.
Yeah. Exactly. So, we're normally not scripted, but an episode or not even episode, video. This isn't even an episode. We don't know if this is going to be an episode or not, or if it's just going to be a video we post out to you. But this is even more unscripted because we don't even have our intro outro script for this. So, if you just happened upon this video, or if this was a part of an episode and you decided to just watch this section, we're the HiTech Podcast, and we are currently in the middle of a new series for the podcast, one of the first series on productivity and how to set up your own way of kind of managing your own tasks, life, projects, work, all of that stuff, right? Talking about practices that have helped us or other people during this. And in this video, we have the great joy of just live setting up something in Notion. So during this series, we've talked a lot about Notion. And part of that reason is because we love Notion and it's great. It's what I manage. Yes, it's what I manage my life through. It's what we manage our company and the podcast through. And so Notion just seemed like the right tool to highlight during this series. Especially because no hiding it, we're an affiliate of Notion.
Right.
And so we figured this would be a good way to highlight some of what we've done. But we're only an affiliate of Notion because we love Notion so much. So let's just make sure the order is correct. I've been using Notion for years before becoming an affiliate. So this is kind of our background. So anyway, in this video, just a little bit of background we're going to be doing during the series. If you've been listening to it, if you haven't been listening to it, what is wrong with you? You should go listen to it. Head over to hitechpod.us for the episode pages related to this series. But we've been talking a lot about setting up stuff in Notion, and I've referenced a handful of times my own system in Notion. And over the last year or so, or a couple of years, I turned my own system into a template. It was mainly to share with friends and stuff who asked what I was doing, or coworkers. And that's how it started. But when we officially agreed to become affiliates of Notion, we decided to turn that template into a more formalized template that we could use with people listening to the podcast or people who are working with us in our company. So that's kind of what we've done. I'm sharing it. Here's the thing. This entire time, Will has actually never set up his own Notion.
Guys, I am a user. I use what Josh designs and puts out there, but I have not. I don't know how to set it all up or do it. Is it a ripe opportunity for us?
And maybe will be helpful here before we jump into live editing and doing stuff. This video will be a little bit different. Once we're done talking here, we're going to be doing it. You're basically just going to be watching Will and I go through stuff. So take that what you will. But Will, what a little bit of background. Why are we doing this? Why are you coming over to Notion? It's not like you haven't had a system. It's not like you've been sitting on your computer, like my grandfather probably taking notes in the Notes app on the computer, well, maybe you've done that a little bit. It's okay. I saw a new coworker doing it and it made me a little sad today or this week. So
in the defense of the Notepad app on Windows 11, okay, they have very recently updated it so that it auto saves and you can tab, so you can just keep notes forever and you don't have to save every time you lose them. So yes, Josh, I do use the
I've just been using it to, sometimes bring over text files, and take a look at a text file I created or code that goes to something.
Does this make me the official grandpa of the podcast? Am I the grandpa?
I don't know. The other person I saw using it is not a grandpa, so maybe I'm just being rude. I just, I originally came from a slightly what would I say? The word is not with me right now, but slightly arrogant technology team who looked down on those using anything other than newer tools like we were using.
What's my background? So I actually for an entire career position. One of my jobs, I had an entire notebook, and every meeting I was in, was a little section of the page, and like my one job, the entire job from day one to day last, I used a physical notebook to take notes, to make little action items, and keep track of everything. When I left that job is when I went to the remote world, and that was no longer sufficient. And I moved into more tech-based things. I've used tools like Asana, tools like Trello, Jira, all those things over time to do different project and whatever management. But at this moment in history, in time, we're creating history. Josh and I are doing too many things, and my previous systems just no longer sufficient. I can't keep track of the day-to-day, the podcasts, social stuff, contracts. I can't. There's just too many things. And so when I look at what Josh does, and I've seen his brain, as he calls it, it looks beautiful. It looks so freeing to know, like, what you have to do and when you have to do it. So that's the motivation. I'm thrilled to set up my database here so I can centralize anything I want to, from groceries and buying new sunglasses to we were talking, fam, we were talking just a second before we hit record about a concert, and Josh goes, okay, hold on, let me put a reminder.
I did put a reminder in my system to check it out. Yeah. I have
a couple weeks ago, Josh and I were doing something personally, socially, and like we hit up, like, I don't know, I got his dinner or something. He's like, oh yeah, I've got a Venmo, and he's like, oh, that's on my task list for tomorrow. He's like, he tasked when he was going to Venmo. I love that. I don't have any. Some people might look at that, or you may be even chuckling to yourself, Josh, about like, maybe I go too far. It's fine. Like, when I think about the weeks where I'm most stressed, and this is where all this is coming out of, is like, we were looking at productivity. We're looking at the tools we can use, like Notion, to be more productive. But at the same time, it's a corollary of reduce stress, reduce anxiety, make work easier to do. I want this. When I'm most anxious is when I'm looking at the 6 tasks I have written down and the 3 in my head I haven't put together yet. So I'm going to step into Josh's world. I'm going to take on this template, and I'm going to try and get this stuff out of my head, off of the paper, out of Notepad, out of Asana, out of all these 17 different places, and centralize them so I can get my work done efficiently and without anxiety, which sounds beautiful. I love that.
Well, I mean, let's not pretend like I don't have any anxiety. I mean, that's, Notion doesn't solve that entirely.
Hey, that could be other issues.
That could be other issues. But so with that said, before we jump into what we're doing, just a couple notes here about where you can find stuff. You can find all this stuff at our website, HiTechPod.us, of course. And on there, you're going to find 2 links that will be helpful. One is just affiliate.notion.so called harness_tech _para dashboard. You can find that there. It says Harness Tech, not High Tech, because we've told you High Tech is brought to you by Harness Tech. And technically Harness Tech is all the stuff we're doing this through. So you can find that there. If you don't want to use the template that we're using here, you're going to see us setting it up with Will, but you are interested in getting Notion. You can also go to affiliate.notion.so /HiTech Podcast. That is our podcast direct link to signing up for Notion. And so you can jump in there as well. So with that said, I think we're just going to jump in, and the plan here is Will's actually just going to share his screen. We're going to talk through stuff. And at this point, Will and I are basically going to ignore you, listener. So have fun watching us set Will up. And we hope this helps you out a little bit.
All right, let's jump in. So screen share, we're gonna pop over. Beautiful. Oh, look at that website, Josh. Isn't it just beautiful? This wonderful visual design done for us by Dadziner. That's found at dadziner.com. We love Michael.
I like seconds after I say we're gonna ignore the listener, you start plugging other stuff.
I can't not look at this and go, it's beautiful. I love it.
Yes, no, I love it.
So I'm over at HiTechPod.us, and I need to drive down to the affiliate area, right? So I'm going to scroll down past our recent episodes, past our beautiful pictures. Oh, so good. And here's our affiliate information. So in these paragraphs is both our general link, like Josh was pointing out, and then specifically, if you're new to Notion, need a starting point, consider exploring Josh's personal productivity management template. That's what I want.
Yep. Yeah, you're gonna click that.
Sweet. All right. This looks like Notion to me. Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the template. A couple things. So obviously, this is actually a genuine question. I have no idea if you've done this yet or not. Have you duplicated any templates in Notion before?
A template? No.
Yeah.
Never once.
No? Okay. Not like the templates I've set up. Yeah. So like okay.
Right.
So yeah, I keep saying we're gonna ignore listener, but I'm not going for a second. The thing I love about Notion is you can actually set up templates so you can duplicate other people's stuff. So that's what we're doing. Will is genuinely in his Notion. This template does not exist in his. So I mean, Will, the first thing you're going to want to do, since you have me here, you can ignore the tutorials I've created. This is the template itself. So
make sure to go use this.
Yeah, you can use those if you're listening and you need some help. There are tutorials on how to do some of the stuff Will and I are talking about here today. So you're going to want to go to, they've changed this a little bit since I last used this. I think, hold your cursor over the icon that looks like it's a copy icon.
Yeah, duplicate.
Yeah, click duplicate. And actually, we'll see what happens when you...
I'm not logged in. I think I just saw that a second ago, so we'll see.
Yeah, you're going to need to log in. That's what I thought might end up happening.
And it took us right to here. Add to private. That looks good, right?
Yes. I think. Do you have your own Notion?
To an invoice.
Do you have your own Notion area outside of Harness Tech? Because that's probably what I'd recommend. Click up where it says Harness Tech.
This?
No, the Harness Tech under Select Workspace. You're already duplicating it. Those the thing. We are dealing with a little bit of lag on this recording, so there might be a couple times that Will does things before he should have.
Oops. I just copied it into our Harness Tech HQ. Isn't that so great?
Yes. We do not want that because we already have a lot in our Harness Tech HQ. Well, it is in your private. Which would you prefer? Would you like it to stay in Harness Tech? It's in your private, so it's not necessarily in the rest of the system.
I'm gonna go to private.
Okay.
This is where you're telling me, and then I've got these
so
areas.
You want to go to William Illingworth's, whichever one is the one that's actually your plan.
Where would you like to add this to private? That's
now asking. Private is just a section in everybody's Notion. No matter what workspace you're in, you have like a private section. So it's fine
because you can publish things now to Notion sites, right?
Yes. Well, and even share. I mean, before that, you were able to share stuff with people, like any pages. So private's just, you might end up like, before, little context, bad people are getting fourth wall. Before we actually got professional and bought our own Notion workspace, and I had you in my workspace. That was what was happening. You were actually a member in my workspace. So private just is always saying you're not gonna be there. Okay. So we're now in a space that you can set stuff up. So this is duplicated. Now you can edit this. Let's just start with the fun thing. What do you want to call this, Will?
I mean, I don't have any sort of creativity. I've only had one cup of coffee today, so Will's brain seems like a good start. Just to keep it simple, and I can clean it up later. Is that this area here?
Yeah. So you just, where it says personal productivity template, that's just the title of the template. You can delete that.
Boom.
You can call that whatever you want.
All right.
I will note here, we won't do this right now, but like obviously, and those listening as well, if you use this template, you can delete the tutorial sections when you're done using them. I wouldn't recommend keeping my tutorials in there for your forever life. Once you've gotten things set up.
Okay.
So, okay. A couple things about what you're seeing. Now, Will, you've seen mine before, but kind of walking through some stuff. So a couple of things that you can also do when we're done here is like you can change whatever the icon is. Obviously, you know that, and like, if you really want our branding up there forever, you can. But I think maybe a picture of Ted Lasso would be appropriate as your banner for your dashboard.
That would have been great.
But yeah. They do have a brain emoji. I was gonna say if you wanna really lean into that brain thing. So which I appreciate. Although I had team members on my last team that apparently thought the brain emoji looked too squishy. We weren't allowed to use it for things. Do with that what you will.
Yep.
So let's scroll down, Will, and take a look at a couple things. Because I've shown you some of this stuff, but like walking through it again will probably be helpful. So the main things in here to remember, Will, that you have, you know that you and I have talked a lot about the para method. So you have areas, which is any part of your life that does not have a start and end date on it. Projects being whatever projects you're working on, right? And then resources connects into both of those areas already. As you remember, Will, you've seen this in Harness Tech because I set up Harness Tech stuff very similarly. But that's like your whole resources area. So like the way I use that is like sometimes like just a second ago when you asked me what our social media manager told us he was going to be doing for posting, I had notes in my personal area just because they were personal notes. I clicked on resources and searched the title of the resource page I knew I was looking for. So
this is a database. If I understand it correctly, right? This is a database, and you've got that linked in these areas. Like if I make something in a resources for an area, or resources for a project, it's going to this resources database.
It auto tags it to that area or project that you created it in, but then the resources area just goes to the entirety of the resources page. So like if you ever need to search things, or you're like the way I use this sometimes too. You also control. You've done this before, Will. You know, if you hit Control P, it brings up the whole search system. You can do this too, but if I'm on my dashboard, sometimes it's just easier. I click on resources, and that should be sorted by most recently created in resources. So, like, if you ever need to find something, that's usually a really easy place to do that. The other thing that I use this a lot for is the mobile app is not. They've done a lot of work now, so it is easier to search now. But it wasn't always easy to search. And so I have my mobile app set up to go to my day dashboard immediately. And sometimes I would click on resources and just click on the most recent page when I was trying to transfer stuff back and forth from other devices. And I use Notion to do that. So here's a good
I'm going to make a quick.
Yeah.
Go ahead. You go first. You go first.
Okay. When you click on other areas, you've already noticed this, the top control, like navigation will change. So you clicked on resources. Resources obviously disappeared because you're in resources. My day is the dashboard, the Will's Brain thing. You can always change that titling. That's just how mine is titled. You're noticing in the breadcrumb, you can also get back there if you like. Because of the way the database stuff is set up, sometimes that's not always easy to do, which is why I set up this navigation in here. So you click on my day to get back to your Will's Brain dashboard if you want.
Gotcha. And you can see that here you've made it consistent, the language from area to area. Yeah. The thing I was going to point out actually was on that subject, Josh. Like I have forward and back buttons on my mouse, and I think it's good to point out to folks that like that works within Notion because these are all individual web pages. So forwards and backs not always the best way to navigate websites, but for this, right, I had just clicked into resources. Like, let me go back real quick. I can click that button on my mouse and it takes me back to this page. Like, that's a functional way to navigate if you're doing just a forwards and back. But just like browsers, that can have its own issues. So make sure if you need to just go forwards. Now I've got a fresh, freshly loaded click here of this resources page. Click on my day, freshly loaded, so everything has been refreshed. It's all good to go. So I like that about Notion, that you can navigate pretty quickly with forward and back. And I'm a mouse guy. I've got tons of little buttons on here, so that's a quick thing for me. Now, so that's resources. Where we want to go next?
So let's I'm gonna just walk through what my day does here for a second, so that you understand it. And then the first starting point we're gonna do is what's called a mind sweep, which we'll do that in a second. But hold your cursor up, Will, up in the top corner when it brings up new and stuff and templates. You can see the filter options. I forget which icon is filter. Sorry. Maybe you don't know because I'm not always super clear. On the database. So like over in the right corner. Under my day.
Yeah.
And then where you see the blue icons, I forget which one. I think the blue icons with the arrows is sort. and the one that's like the lines is filter. Yeah, go ahead and click on filter.
It's filter. Yep. It gives me these.
And then, yes, open up the 4 rules.
Okay. Are these Josh's 4 rules for success?
Oh
God,
you could call that. So okay, real quick, this is just a back end. If you guys just want to go purely with what I do, then you don't need to know this. But when you do get to editing and stuff more, and you're tweaking, I want you to understand some things. So the template is set up like mine, so it's very specific. So this is part of the reason I like Notion over other tools, because I can be very customized. So basically, the way my day works is anything that is due today, or starts today, that is not done, shows up on the dashboard. Okay, that's the basic thing. That's what those 2 rules down there are. Notion allows you to group rules. Anything that's set as priority also shows up on the dashboard. Now I will note, I don't think I changed the template. I'm just realizing that it filters out currently personal things. I changed that on mine like a year ago on my personal, my own one. Because it used to be I didn't want personal items to show up on my day because I was using it. And then we started the HiTech Podcast and Harness Tech, and a whole other bunch of things was happening. And I realized I wanted personal on my dashboard. You can always delete that filter out if you want.
So just to walk some folks through, like in a linear fashion, right? From the top, it's saying where status is priority, blah blah blah, or if we have the start date or the end date, blah. Like that's what if you're not familiar with kind of conditional logic like this when it comes to filters, you do want to consider this in a linear fashion. But I could just delete this whole section if I don't want the end date parameter. I could delete this whole section if I don't want the start date parameter. It's really like what Josh is saying, it's really customizable. His point here was on this personal thing. If I don't want that issue, I can just remove that line completely. So it's going to start with where status is priority. Anything with a priority will be on this. Anything with the start date will be on this. I think this is the end date, right? Will be on this. Now I think we've got personal logged into each of these as well. I'm not going to have this condition. I'm going to want everything. So I'm just dropping it from
go ahead and remove it
my parameters.
Yep. And that's exactly what's going on.
And fits in one little spot.
Yeah. And you're right. The end thing actually is probably obsolete now because Notion's gotten better about this. But in the past with Notion, when I first set this up, when you had a date range, which I do on tasks, some people don't. They just put a due date on it. I put a date range because I plan out when I want to start possibly a task and when I need it done by. That's just my system. When you do that in a date field in Notion, it used to be that Notion had problems finding the end date. It would only find the first date in the time frame when you were doing formulas or filters. So I did like a formula that looked for the end date in a time frame. So it all works. That's why I haven't changed it. But just so you know what that end thing means, if you ever do other filtering, that's what it is. It's just the end date on your time frame.
And that's the comparison of these 2 in the middle. This one at the end is specifically about anything with a delegated task. So it's trying to, if something's been delegated, which means it's delegated to someone else, this is helping you forecast, keeping sight on things that might be within a week that's been delegated to someone else. So 1, 2, and 3 are about me stuff, right? The priority and done. That's what I'm seeing here. I'm looking, folks, when I'm reading this, I'm looking at these filter tags, priority, done. These 3 are me. And this delegated one is if I've delegated a task to another member, or it doesn't have to be somebody even in Notion. You're just, you've delegated it out to somewhere else. That's what this 4th one is, helping you track other people's forecasting. That's what's happening. Like, Josh, I love this. Like, this is not scripted, folks. I can read this. I understand what's happening. He just showed it to me for the first time. So it's all good. We love Notion.
Yeah, he has not seen this deep into the system so far. So he's going to be using it and even understand. If it makes everybody feel... I don't know if it'll make anybody feel better or make you feel better. My current one has, I think, 6 rules on it. I added more stuff after doing this. I realized I actually needed to know when a delegated thing was also due tomorrow, to remind myself that somebody I delegated a task to didn't get it done yet. So that
sounds like a manager's perspective.
Yes, that was when I became a manager. That became, Delegated was not even a status, if anybody was curious, in this thing before I became a manager. So because I usually didn't care.
Yes.
Nobody reported to me. So this is the thing. You can customize, you can customize this as much as you want down the road if you have other stuff you want to add in here. But this is why I like Notion. What the dashboard is doing is, I think a lot of people have asked me how I don't forget tasks. This is how. The dashboard reminds me of things that are due there have been several times I've forgotten about a task, even when I've been planning out my day, and I get to my dashboard to start time blocking things. And all of a sudden there's a thing up on my dashboard that I forgot about that's popping up because my filters are also, they've got my back. So that's kind of this system here. So I think we can click out of that for now, Will.
Yep.
Because I don't think we need to, you can customize that more if you want. Just a little bit about the My Day area. Yep. So my workday is the main view I work off of. Will, you know this, I time block in here. So that's what that timing, that time field is down there. So you have the 8 to 9. It's grouped by it. I preferred that because I can move things between blocks and they're toggles. You can close the block when you're done with it. Tasks in this system have a task name. They have a time frame, which can be a single date or multiple dates. So you can see there an example task. It's November 23rd, 2020. This must have been when I set this thing up to the 25th.
Wow.
I don't use checkboxes. I use statuses on tasks, so that's set to priority. The short name thing project. So in Harness Tech, we don't actually have this. You'll see this when we look at projects. Okay. You know how in Harness Tech, in the HiTech Podcast area, like we link tasks to projects, and templates auto do that, like they tag them. In the dashboard, it was annoying to do this where it just showed the linked project page like we do in Harness Tech, because it was so long sometimes, like project names would be super long. And the dashboard, like I personally make my dashboard like a little part of the screen on my screens. Like it's not just a whole monitor. It's usually like somewhere smaller. So it annoyed me. So I created a field in projects called short name, and I just gave it like a little short name tag. That's a part of setting up a project. When you do that stuff just shows up here automatically. I will say other people, like some contractors that we work with, will on the Harness Tech side, have gotten rid of that field. They didn't see it as purposeful. You can do whatever you want with that. You can find out if you like it or not.
Right.
Same with the next field.
Well, and I think for the sake of project, right? Like you and I across different areas, but not to use the para language. So between Harness Tech, between HiTech, between personal, between work, day jobs and stuff, like we have a lot of projects. And I can see it being very relevant where I might have the same task, set agenda for two different projects. I need to know that set task is for where it's actually for, set agendas. Yeah. Like I get why we would have the project. Yeah.
And in the case of those who got rid of it, it's just they got rid of it, and there is a field in there that will show you the actual linked project page. They just brought that up onto their dashboard because they didn't make their dashboard as small as I do. Block is another one that at one point, I never removed this from the template, but at one point I had names for my time blocks. So that's what that field is doing. Okay. You can always get rid of that field if you don't want it. You can decide what you want to do there. It's formula based on the time thing next to it. Gotcha. And then time is just my current blocks, but that's an editable field. So if you click into that, you'll see those were my major blocks. You can add anybody listening to, like you can add, it's just a select field. You can add other options. You can edit the existing ones that are there. It will not break anything other than that formula block field that honestly we could probably just have deleted from the template and I forgot about it. Like that's kind of the thing. It's like you can see Will add.
I just added one, folks. You saw it happen live. That's awesome. And we've got the light gray. Yeah, they're gray there. So
you can make whatever colors you want. I had a lot of other colors other places, so I made it light gray.
Cool.
Yeah.
That's really easy.
So there's
folks, it's really easy.
And the thing I like about this too is each task is a page, right? So Will knows this. Like you can open up that page and put in other stuff, right? So like you open that up, pop it open sideways. And then there are a bunch of my existing templates in there. None of them have sensitive data in them. They're just mainly linked to certain pages that exist. Will, as you're setting this stuff up,
Well,
you'll
now
have
that
to
I've
just delete.
clicked out, the templates disappear. Right?
Yes, yeah. And
Like
Notion
once
is
I
you click
clicked
into
in,
the
the template
page.
go away. But...
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you'll have to delete those templates and mess with them. It's up to you. You can edit those down the road. I highly recommend setting up your own templates, especially because now Notion has repeat features for templates. So that's how like repeat tasks that happen week to week. That's how I do that. I have a template and it just auto populates it based on repeat. So anyway, okay. So that's the main question. That's the main setup on my day. Will, any questions about that? I think that's just the biggest part to understand about the whole system is what this main dashboard is actually doing.
So, I do have more information than a complete novice. I'll just point out for novices' sake, like Josh has built these columns to do specific tasks, and these are all they're all filtering to some other location. They're all attaching to database. Like there's purposes for them. Like he's saying around a project or block, you can hide these or get rid of them. They're not necessarily going to be deleted unless you go find them and delete them, in the ultimate template or whatever. But you can add columns too. Like, and that's where if you're going into customizing this, you're going to need to get more familiar with like what is it like to add a column, and you might add it here. I'll leave that as an open question for Josh in a second. He can follow up for me. Like if I add that column here, where's it going? Like you're going to get familiar with these kinds of things as you build into this. But Josh has built the template. You can start using this, right? You may not understand or want the project or block. Like that's fine. Priority, time frame, the name of the task, everybody needs that. Like I'm just going to add in one real quick. I like to make sure I eat my breakfast. I mean, I know it's not a task a lot of people want to do, but folks, I didn't eat breakfast for 30 years of my life. So I'm doing this now, and it's a very important thing that I make sure I eat my breakfast. I consider it priority. It's going into this, like I'm going to need to change this block stuff, but it's not in a project yet. I'm going to figure that out. It's going to be something I want to do every day. So I'm going to add in a timeline, and then, if I can probably make it repeat somewhere, but it's going out of sight. These are the things that you'll start to get familiar with as you're creating these. Now, I did leave that open-ended question, Josh. So what do we do if we add in a column? Is that going to get in the way of anything, or is it pretty easy? I can just add that to track a new field.
You just add a column. The thing to note is that everything, your projects and areas are all part of technically a database that's running on the back end that's there embedded in Notion. And the same thing with tasks. Tasks is a database. Above, you'll see it says tasks with an arrow kind of pointing. You don't need to click that, Will. But that just means it's a database. And the database technically lives in the projects page area just because that's where it made most sense to live for me. But this is a filtered view of that. Right. And all the filtered views you see up at the top, my workday timeline, they're just all views. So when you add a field here, it does mean it'll show up in the full database, but it should just show up here. Now I will say, like, we'll open up eat breakfast for a second. The actual task. So you'll see there are some other fields you didn't see on my day. So time frame you saw, status you saw, time you saw. I technically have a field called hours worked where I put in hours on a task. I'll be honest, I actually never used that. That came with the guy I originally... This template came from another template somebody else originally had. Now, I massively changed his template, but the baseline of how the databases were connected kind of triggered for me the idea that led to this system. Project page. That's technically called project page, but in this system, it's actually technically area/project page. Unlike in our harness tech space, I have areas and projects all technically in the same database, and they're just filtered differently based on a category you select, which will make more sense here in a second. So, like, you can see that if you click on 5 more properties below, go ahead and do that. That's all the current properties in the database. So, like, there's some other stuff in there that's working on the back end that filters either do something with, or it's a formula that does something, right? So, those are hidden because I don't need to see them. They just do stuff that makes sure the whole system works. But if you're ever curious about what's all in there, you can see that from the page area as well. Does that make sense?
And to make the connection, absolutely. And to make the connection, right? If I add that column on this page, it's going to add as a property here. Right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you might just need to hide it
well, not
on the
necessarily.
task page.
Right. If I could add a property here, that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to go to this view, because this is a view
Yeah.
that's already been set up. So there's you got to know the relationship here. Like, they can be in both places. If I add a property here, it could show up as a column here, but you got to set it on the view. You can add a column here, and it's going to become a property here, but it may not be like the top properties. You're going to have to do some rearranging. So
yeah,
we don't have to go too far with that. I know it's like a little bit of bunny trail, but like, I know these things about Notion, bringing some of these folks
Yeah.
up to speed.
Other
You'll be
people
able to
might
just
not.
use this out of the box, but those are ways you could customize it if you want to.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with what we've done so far. So